My name is Mark Ellison. I'm 38 years old, and until half a year ago, I believed I was living a life built on trust. I worked as a financial consultant, lived in a quiet townhouse near the river, and shared that home with the woman I'd loved for almost 7 years, my wife. Lena. She was bright, sharp-minded, a little stubborn, but always warm in that way that convinces you finally found someone safe. I convinced myself our marriage was stable because nothing obvious threatened it. We had routines, shared habits, synchronized schedules. It felt normal, predictable, comfortable. But comfort is often just blindness with soft edges. Everything began unraveling the day I found her smile changing. Not in front of me at first, only in photos. Strange little things. More makeup on weekdays. A softness in her eyes I didn't recognize. A glow that didn't seem meant for me. I tried to ignore it because suspicion is an ugly seed that, once planted, never stops growing. And I didn't want to be the kind of husband who saw ghosts in harmless shadows. But the shadows kept moving. It started with her work hours stretching into the night. "Just a project we need to finish," she'd say. But she never looked tired, only distant. Then she started guarding her phone, slipping it into her pocket the moment I entered a room. She changed her screen lock. She turned off her message previews. And every time I asked if everything was okay, she'd force a smile that didn't reach her eyes and tell me she was just stressed. The thing about lies is that they rarely come alone. They bring silence with them. One Thursday evening, I heard her laughing behind the bathroom door, a light, fluttering laugh I hadn't heard from her in months, maybe longer. It was the kind of laugh a woman gives when someone makes her feel wanted. When she came out, she froze for a second, as if she'd seen guilt reflected in her own expression. Then she brushed past me, saying she had to take an early morning meeting tomorrow. That night I barely slept. Something inside me, some buried instinct, had finally woken up. The next morning, she left at 6:15 a.m. It was too early for her usual schedule. Too controlled, too polished. She kissed my cheek in a hurry and disappeared out the door before I even processed the gesture. I waited 3 minutes, then I followed her. I told myself I wasn't spying. I told myself I just needed clarity, truth, something definite. Otherwise I'd drown in possibilities, in unanswered questions, in the paranoia building behind my ribs. I kept a safe distance, my car slowing whenever she turned. She didn't drive to the office. She didn't even drive downtown. Instead she headed toward the coastal highway, a route she never took on workdays. 32 minutes later, she pulled into a small parking lot near a beachside cafe, a place we'd gone only once. Back when everything still felt solid beneath our feet. I parked far behind and watched. A man stepped out of a dark SUV almost instantly, as if he'd been waiting, tall, broad-shouldered, confident in the way that makes you instinctively hate a stranger. Lena walked toward him, and my heart slammed against my ribs when I saw her smile, wide, bright, alive. She touched his arm. He touched her waist. No hesitation, no fear, no guilt, only familiarity, only desire. The kind she hadn't shown me in months. I felt something inside me tear, not violently, but quietly, like a thread snapping under too much strain. I wanted to storm out of the car. I wanted answers. I wanted anger. But all I felt was numbness, spreading slowly, freezing everything inside. Numbness is worse than pain. Pain forces the truth out of you. Numbness hides it. I stayed in the car and watched them walk into the cafe. When the door closed behind them, I wasn't the same man I had been an hour earlier. I drove back home, every mile feeling like I was increasing the distance between who I was and who I was becoming. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing, trying to figure out what the hell to do next. Confront her? No, confrontation without evidence is just shouting into a void. Ignore it? Impossible. Pretend nothing happened. Cowardly. I needed the whole picture. That weekend I began noticing every inconsistency that had once slipped past me. She took longer showers. She forgot her perfume in the car. She slept on the edge of the bed. When I reached for her hand, she pulled away gently, as if she didn't want to hurt me, the kind of subconscious reaction you can't fake. Monday night, after she fell asleep, I sat in the living room with her laptop on my knees. She had changed her phone's password, but her email was still signed in. A mistake, a careless one. Or maybe she believed I trusted her too much to ever look. I opened her inbox. Most messages were ordinary work, bills, newsletters she never read. But then I found a folder buried inside her archive. Hidden but not enough. Named simply, Projects 2024. Inside were messages from him. His name was Adrian Cole. Some emails were harmless, work-related, dated months back. But the most recent ones, those were the ones that felt like blades sliding between my ribs. Last night was unbelievable. I hate waiting a whole week to see you. Does he suspect anything? You deserve more than a marriage that exhausts you. And the one that kept replaying in my head like a broken record. I'm ready whenever you are. Just say the word. My throat tightened. My hand shook. The numbness cracked, and something darker leaked out. Not fury, not panic, but a kind of cold focus. A clarity that sometimes comes to men who have lost too much to pretend anymore. I didn't slam the laptop shut. I didn't scream. I didn't wake her. Instead, I stared at the screen, absorbing every detail, every timestamp, every sentence, until the truth became undeniable. My marriage hadn't cracked. It had already collapsed. And Lena, the woman I had trusted with everything, was planning something far worse than just slipping away into another man's arms. I clicked the next email, and what I saw there didn't just hurt me. It changed the entire direction of what I needed to do next. I didn't sleep the night after discovering Emma's secret messages. My mind kept replaying the same images, her late-night smiles at her phone, the unexplained tension in her voice, the way she pulled away from me as if my touch had suddenly become something she needed permission for. That morning, I woke up with a single thought carved deep into my skull. I needed answers, but not from her yet. Emma moved through the kitchen like nothing had happened, humming softly while making coffee. Her hair was still damp from the shower, and she wore the same robe I bought her for our anniversary. The sight of it made me feel physically sick, like the memory itself had been contaminated. Morning, she said without looking at me. I studied her face, calm to calm. Morning. My voice sounded normal. It shouldn't have. She left for work a few minutes later. No kiss, no goodbye. Just a quick, distracted see you tonight. The same line she'd used every day for the last 2 weeks. And every time she said it, I realized now she had been lying. After she drove off, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. I wasn't going to confront her unprepared. People lie. Screens don't. The first thing I did was check her shared device history. Emma wasn't as careful as she believed. Many apps synced across our home Wi-Fi without her noticing. That's how I traced several of her deleted conversations. They were mostly harmless on the surface, but the timestamps told a different story. Late-night messages, lunchtime calls, quick exchanges during hours when she claimed she had back-to-back meetings. But one thing stood out: a contact saved only as our short messages, never more than a sentence. Lunch same place. You free after work? Don't say anything yet. 3 words that kept echoing in my head. Don't say anything yet. Yet? About what? I refused to jump to conclusions. Evidence had to be solid. So I tracked locations associated with her messages: hotel parking lots, small cafes far from her office, unfamiliar streets she'd never mentioned. Every hour I spent digging only sharpened the picture I didn't want to see. By late afternoon, I knew I had to take the next step, follow her again, not from a place of obsession, but clarity. If I wanted the truth, I had to watch it with my own eyes. Emma texted me around 6:30 p.m., working late again. Don't wait up. That was all the confirmation I needed. I parked across from her office building 15 minutes later. She walked out at 7:02 p.m. not tired, not stressed, but surprisingly light. She checked over her shoulder once, then started walking fast toward the next block. I stayed far behind her, moving calmly, blending into the evening crowd. She reached a small, dimly lit parking lot and approached a silver car. Someone was inside. The passenger door opened. A man stepped out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black jacket. His face was shadowed, but when he smiled at her, something in my chest tensed so hard I had to remind myself to breathe. She smiled back. Not the polite smile she gave strangers. Not the soft smile she gave me years ago. A smile with familiarity, comfort, maybe even affection. She got inside his car. For a moment, I just stood there in the shadows, listening to the hum of the street around me. I didn't feel anger, not the explosive kind. What I felt was colder, heavier, almost metallic. A betrayal that settled into my bones, stripping away every illusion I'd held on to. I followed them at a safe distance. They drove to a quiet riverside area, parked, and walked toward a narrow path overlooking the water. I stayed hidden behind a line of trees close enough to hear fragments of their conversation carried by the wind. "Does he suspect?" the man asked. "No," Emma said quickly. "He's oblivious. He never pays attention." The words hit harder than I expected. Oblivious, never pays attention. She wasn't just cheating. She was mocking me. But then the conversation shifted. The man's tone grew serious. "We don't have much time. You know what will happen if this goes wrong?" Emma nodded, folding her arms tightly. "I know. Just give me a few more days. I'll handle it." My breath stalled. Handle what? What exactly was she playing? This wasn't the kind of conversation cheating couples had. This was something else, something hidden, planned, coordinated. I leaned forward slightly, but I couldn't risk moving closer. One wrong sound would expose me. They stayed near the river for 20 minutes, talking in low voices. Not touching, not kissing. That surprised me. If they were romantically involved, they were being unusually cautious. When they finally walked back to the car, Emma's expression had changed, no longer relaxed, but tense, almost frightened. It wasn't just an affair. Something deeper was happening. They drove off again, and I followed them toward the city. But halfway there, Emma's phone lit up in my dashboard reflection. She'd sent me a message. "Heading home soon. Love you, love you." That lie burned worse than any truth she could have confessed. I didn't follow them further. I already had enough for the next phase of my plan. I now knew 3 things. Emma was hiding more than an affair. The man she met wasn't just a lover, he was connected to something bigger. Whatever they were planning, Emma intended to handle me before it happened, and I wasn't going to let her. Not anymore. The morning after everything I discovered felt strangely calm, as if the world had decided to pause just long enough for me to gather my thoughts. I woke up before the alarm, not because I was rested, but because the weight of what I knew wouldn't let me sleep longer. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that comes before something breaks. Amelia was still asleep, lying peacefully on the opposite edge of the bed, as if even in her dreams she was trying to distance herself from me. I watched her for a moment, wondering how many lies could fit behind a face that looked so soft, so innocent, so familiar. I didn't wake her. I didn't want a conversation. Not yet. Conversations lead to excuses, excuses lead to manipulation. And I wasn't ready to let her twist the truth into something I'd start doubting. I needed more than suspicions. I needed structure, clarity, control, the 3 things I had always trusted more than people. I left the house quietly, stepping outside into the crisp air. The sky was pale and empty, a reminder that life doesn't stop for anyone's heartbreak. I drove with no real destination in mind, just wanting space from the walls that had witnessed the beginning and the end of my relationship. Eventually, I stopped at a viewpoint overlooking the river. I sat there for nearly half an hour, replaying the last months like a movie I didn't remember acting in. The signs had been there. The distance, the sudden defensiveness, The new perfume she claimed was a gift from a coworker. The way she had stopped reaching for my hand. Those things don't happen overnight, they accumulate slowly like rust, until the entire structure crumbles. My phone vibrated. A message from Amelia. Where did you go? I didn't answer. Instead, I turned the screen off and leaned back in the seat. Let her wonder. Let her feel even a fraction of uncertainty. She had handed me enough of it. After an hour I returned home, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to keep the illusion alive a little longer. If I acted differently too soon, she'd sense it, and people who are hiding something become unpredictable when cornered. I stepped inside to find her already dressed, pretending to tidy the kitchen. Her movements were stiff, rehearsed. She kept looking over her shoulder at me like she expected a confrontation. Morning, she finally said. Morning, I replied, matching her tone, neutral, calm, unreadable. She watched me carefully, searching for cracks in my expression, but I gave her nothing. After a moment she smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. I have to leave early today, she said, reaching for her bag. Of course she did. I nodded and watched her walk out the door. As soon as it closed, I activated the small tracking app I had installed on her phone. A precaution, not an act of revenge, not yet. She drove in the opposite direction from her office. I wasn't surprised, but today, instead of following her physically, I dug deeper into her digital trail. I accessed her shared workspace, her hidden conversations, her deleted files, everything. And what I found was worse than the cheating itself. The messages revealed that her affair with Ethan wasn't just emotional or physical. They were planning something together, something involving her company, money transfers, and confidential data. A scheme that could get both of them fired at best, arrested at worst. He'd promised her freedom. She'd promised him trust. Together they pictured a life built on stolen resources and broken rules. But what pierced me deeper was one message Amelia had sent in. Daniel doesn't suspect a thing. He trusts too easily. It makes everything simpler. I don't know how long I stared at that line. Minutes, maybe an hour. Trust too easily, the words echoed painfully, mockingly. I had never been naive. Not once in my entire adult life. I had been cautious, measured, guarded. And the one time I chose to believe in someone, she used it as a tool against me. By midday, I had enough evidence to expose their scheme to the company, to destroy their reputations, to make sure they wouldn't be able to talk their way out of the mess they created. But I didn't act immediately, not because I hesitated, but because the timing had to be perfect. If I moved too soon, they could adapt. If I waited too long, they could execute their plan fully. I needed precision. Later that afternoon, Amelia texted me, "I'll be home late." "Don't wait up," I almost laughed. Late. Always late. Always somewhere else, with someone else, plotting something that was never meant to include me. Instead of replying, I drove to the hotel where they usually met. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. I waited in my car, watching from a distance. At 6:27 p.m., her car parked quietly in the lot. She stepped out wearing clothes she never wore at home, makeup she never applied for me, and a smile that was meant for someone else. 5 minutes later, Ethan appeared at the side entrance and ushered her inside. I recorded nothing. I didn't need visual proof of that part. The emotional betrayal was already complete, and the corporate betrayal was documented enough. As the sun set, I sat in my car, hands on the steering wheel, thinking of how everything would end. Not with shouting, not with a dramatic scene, not with begging or crying. No, the truth would collapse on them quietly, professionally, in a way they couldn't escape. I didn't want revenge out of anger anymore. I wanted consequences, clean, unavoidable, irreversible. When I returned home, the house felt colder than usual. I walked into my office, turned on my computer, and opened the file I had been building for days, a meticulously compiled report, backed with timestamps, evidence, and internal logs. Everything was ready. All that remained was to decide when to press send, and whether Amelia deserved to hear from me first, or whether silence would be the final, most powerful message I could give her. I didn't sleep the night after everything unraveled, not because of fear and not because of heartbreak. That was long gone, but because too many pieces finally started clicking into place, connecting into a picture I wasn't prepared to see. Infidelity was one thing, lies were another, but what I had stumbled onto, it was bigger than either. The morning dragged itself into my apartment like a stranger I didn't want to let in. I sat by the window, watching the light slowly seep across the wooden floor, and replayed everything I'd learned over and over in my head. Emily and Jason, the accidental co-worker she just happened to work late with, were not simply having an affair. They were connected through something else, something hidden behind locked folders and encrypted emails that they assumed I would never even know existed. They were wronged up by noon. I had sifted through enough data to piece together the outline of what they had been doing. Their company had launched a new internal project, supposedly dealing with predictive analytics, but the emails I managed to retrieve, the ones Emily forgot to delete, suggested something less professional and more opportunistic. Jason had been using her access to bypass security barriers. She had been helping him willingly, maybe out of affection, maybe out of stupidity. Either way, they were doing something that could cost both of them their jobs or worse. And I wasn't sure whether Emily was being manipulated or was simply manipulating me while helping him. The answer didn't really matter anymore. The betrayal wasn't just romantic. It was personal, moral, calculated. Still, even after all of that, part of me hesitated. Not because I felt sympathy, not because I still loved her, but because I knew the moment I pulled the trigger, metaphorically, everything in her life would fall apart. And even after everything she did, something in me still hated the idea of being the reason someone broke completely. I pushed that feeling aside. She hadn't hesitated when she broke me. Around 3 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. Emily, her first message in today's, "Can we talk, please?" I stared at the screen for a long time, long enough that the message preview faded and my reflection appeared in its place. I didn't look like the man she'd known anymore. The shock, the confusion, they were gone. All that was left was clarity. A second message arrived. "I just want to explain everything." I knew that. Explanations. People always think explanations fix everything. I typed one sentence. "Meet me at 6, same place we first talked, the cafe where we met." I didn't send it because I cared about nostalgia. I sent it because it was public, open, and impossible for her to twist into something emotional or dramatic. There would be no tears, no theatrics, no physical closeness, just words and consequences. At 6 o'clock sharp, she arrived. Emily sat down across from me cautiously, like she wasn't sure which version of me she would be facing. The guilty expression worked for her too well. Someone else might have believed it, not me. Her eyes were tired, red around the edges, but full of practiced sincerity. "Daniel," she said quietly, "I know you know about me and Jason." "You could call it that," I replied. She swallowed, then leaned closer. "It wasn't what you think. I didn't mean for any of it to happen. Jason and we made a mistake, a really stupid mistake, and I regret it." I let her talk. "Regret is easy when consequences are coming," she continued, voice trembling in just the right places. I was stressed. I felt like our relationship had gotten routine. He was just someone who paid attention at the wrong time, and I didn't think clearly. "But I never meant to hurt you." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she expected this to work. "Emily," I said calmly, "you didn't just cheat. You helped him commit something that could destroy your entire department." The blood drained from her face. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She wasn't expecting that. I slid my phone across the table. On the screen, the email chain she had shared with Jason, the files they had moved, the confidential data they accessed. Her hands shook. "Daniel, How did you reused your passwords, I interrupted. Over and over. You left the digital door wide open. For the first time since I discovered the truth, she looked genuinely afraid not of me, but of what she had done. Are you going to report it? She whispered. That depends on you, her eyes filled with panic. Please, don't ruin my life. I'll lose my job, my reputation. I'll lose everything. I could hear her breathing quicken. This wasn't the calm, confident Emily I had known. This was someone suddenly forced to see the edge she'd been standing on. You already ruined what you had with me, I said softly. But what happens next? That depends on whether you start telling the truth instead of rehearsed excuses. She closed her eyes and nodded slowly. When she opened them again, something finally cracked. The mask, the performance, the lies. Jason said it was harmless, she whispered. He said the company wouldn't notice. He said I was just giving him access he already deserved. I believe him because I wanted to believe someone still noticed me. There it was, the core of it. She betrayed me not because of passion or romance or emotion, but because someone fed her attention she didn't know how to handle responsibly. I stood up. She grabbed my wrist. Daniel, please, Emily, I said, pulling my hand away. This isn't my problem anymore. The consequences are yours. I'm done being part of them. I walked out, not because I didn't care, but because I had cared too much for too long. Outside, the cold evening air felt sharper than usual, like the world had shifted a few degrees into clarity. I didn't look back at the cafe windows. I didn't want to see whether she cried, whether she panicked, whether she tried to chase me. None of that was my responsibility anymore. But as I walked toward the parking lot, I saw a familiar figure standing near the corner of the street. Jason, hands in pockets, watching me, smirking like he already knew something I didn't. Rough night? He asked casually. I stopped walking. The smirk widened. Thought we should talk, he added, since you stuck your nose where it didn't belong. And just like that, the real story began. The apartment felt painfully quiet after everything that had happened. For the first time in weeks, there were no raised voices, no accusations, no ringing phone calls that made someone's stomach twist. Just silence, heavy, cold, almost suffocating. Neera stood near the window, watching the city lights flicker below like distant signals from a life that no longer belonged to her. The sky above was turning violet. Dawn was approaching. Along with the moment she had been avoiding, she heard the apartment door close behind her. Slow steps, familiar ones. Leo. He didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. She already knew that look on his face, tired, crushed, full of unsaid words that were already too late. So, he finally said quietly, this is really it. Mira turned, her eyes red but dry. She had run out of tears somewhere between the betrayal, the truth, and the night she discovered the messages that destroyed everything. It's been it for a long time, she replied. We both just pretended it wasn't. Leo lowered his gaze. I never wanted to hurt you. That's what everyone says. Her voice was steady, even the people who do. He winced, but he didn't argue. For once, he didn't try to explain, justify, soften. Maybe he finally understood that nothing he said could fix what he'd broken. The longest silence of their relationship stretched between them, and for the first time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was final, a closure waiting to happen. I packed my things, Leo said, nodding toward the hallway. I'll move out today. Mira nodded. Good. She expected to feel satisfaction, maybe relief. Instead, there was only emptiness. The kind that comes when something ends too late, after too much damage. He hesitated, then sat down on the edge of the sofa, the same place where she once confronted him. The memory flashed through both of them, obvious in the way they avoided looking at that spot on the floor. I keep thinking, Leo said quietly, that if I hadn't done what I did, we could have fixed everything else. Maybe, she said. But you did. He nodded again, this time slower, as if each movement hurt. Then he whispered, I loved you. Loved, she corrected. Past tense. Leo swallowed hard. And you don't? Mira shook her head, not out of cruelty, but truth. I don't know who you are anymore, she said. And I don't want to love someone who can do what you did. The honesty struck him harder than anger ever had. He looked around the apartment. The plant they bought together that somehow survived their chaos, the half-repaired shelf, the photo frames she had already emptied. The ghosts of their life stared back at him, silent and accusing. I guess this is where we let each other go, he whispered. No, Mira said softly. This is where we finally stop holding on. Leo stood. He reached for his bag, paused, then turned back to her one last time. If you ever need anything, I won't, she interrupted gently. But thank you. He managed a small, heartbreaking smile. Take care of yourself, Mira. You too. He walked to the door, opened it, stood there for just a moment longer, as if memorizing the breath before goodbye. Then he stepped out. The door clicked shut, and that was it. For the first time in months, Mira exhaled fully. Her chest loosened, her shoulders dropped. It didn't feel good, not yet, but it felt real. She walked through the apartment slowly, touching the table, the empty shelves, the window glass. The space felt larger now, as if it had been holding its breath too. She picked up her phone. A single message from her friend Nina blinked on the screen. Did he leave? Mira typed, yes, it's over. Then she added something she didn't expect. I think I'll be okay. She put down the phone, stepped onto the balcony, and let the cold air wrap around her. The city below was waking up, unaware of the storm she had lived through. Life kept moving. And finally, so would she. She didn't know where she was going next. She didn't know what healing would look like. But she knew one thing for certain. This ending wasn't her breaking point. It was her beginning. Mira closed her eyes, breathed in the morning air, and let the last pieces of the past fall away. For the first time since everything happened, she felt free.